everyone. Happy Friday, happy Saturday, wherever you are in the world. This is USA Global TV and Radio, and I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I'm the president, founder, and chief listening officer here at our network. Our show today is Authentic Achievements, and our topic is advocating for others. Joining me for this lively discussion is the star of our show, KIM-ADELE Randall, and she's joining us from London. Let's welcome her to the program. Hi, KIM-ADELE.
Dr. Jacalyn, how are you?
Well, thanks. How are you?
Good, thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you as well. It feels like we just saw each other, but it was already a week ago and the calendar has changed. So
it's scary how fast time goes. I keep forgetting whether or not I've said Happy New Year or not to people.
It's crazy.
It's only been a few days, doesn't it?
Yes, for sure. So how was your New Year's?
Yeah, it was good, thank you. Quiet, but nice. I think it's a real chance, isn't it, to just reflect and refocus. So I think that was nice. How about yours?
It was very quiet. It was filled with exercise and work and reflection as well. So the kind of day that I like.
Yeah, but I think that's it, isn't it? It's finding the thing that works for us. I was talking to a few friends where they felt that their choice of New Year's Eve might not be the right one. And I was like, but is it right for you? Because if it's right for you, it's the right one, because it's only you that's got to live it.
So true. And it's interesting when I think about when I was younger and how I would spend New Year's. And now that I'm older, it's completely different. Before it was, oh, let's get dressed up and go to a party, to a restaurant or a club or something. And now I have no interest in doing that.
No, I'm with you. I'm like, can we not just like stay in with a group of people that you really know well and just do that? Or actually sometimes, just staying on my own and go, it'd be quite nice to just be really decadent and watch a movie and just chill.
just do whatever you want. That's such a gift.
Yeah, it is. It's a gift we don't often give ourselves, isn't it?
It's very true. And, we talk about a lot of different topics here on Authentic Achievements. And we talk about, what I call the gold stars, getting the certificates, the degrees, getting everything that we can put on LinkedIn and put as much stuff in there. But something else that's also an authentic achievement, I really feel, is advocating for others, volunteering, being involved with a charity. What are your thoughts about this?
Oh, I think it's so true. I'm a big believer in the fact that we need to be able to give back, because there, for the grace of God, go all of us. And, there's been moments in all of our lives where things haven't gone according to plan, where perhaps things were a little bit tougher. And so I think if we can find it in us to go and give what we can, and that doesn't have to be money, I think time or presence, or just as in presence, as in your presence, not as in gifts necessarily, can really, really help. And I think it keeps us grounded. I'm very conscious that we're quite fortunate. And, my little girl, as you know, is the apple of my eye, little Scarlett. And I'm trying my hardest to bring her up to realise that, yes, we are very lucky and we're very grateful for that. But not everybody is in that same position. And so we have to, wherever we can, act with kindness, and whatever that is, whether that's helping somebody to do something, whether that's taking some food to people that really need it, we try and involve Scarlett in that, so that she gets used to the fact that that's a natural part of life. It's not just about what we want and what we get, it's about what we can give, because that's often where the greatest gift is, isn't it, in the giving to others.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And I've spoken to so many people who, they're kind of in a place where they're lost and they're looking for purpose. And I always suggest volunteering, getting involved. And I've heard this same remark over and over again. What am I going to do? How can I help? They have people. They don't need anyone else. And there's really that fear that they're not going to be good enough to volunteer. And the truth is that people are just happy when people show up. I remember in my corporate career, we actually had a day where we were focused on other people. We wrote out Christmas cards that were going to be delivered to people we don't even know. And it was really kind of an interesting experience. And then we found out later how excited people were just to receive a card, because that was the only thing that they were
Oh,
going to have from someone outside of wherever it was they were. So I just really encourage people to get involved. And I've also heard, well, where can I give my time? What can I do? You can Google it. You can look up how to volunteer in your area, in your community. What are some of the things that you've done or you've wanted to do or you're looking to do when it comes to giving back?
oh, great question. So you're right. You can Google it. You can find out. I also go and look at things like, where are the places that I think people might just like some additional help. And great ones are things like schools or care homes or nurseries, libraries. Being offering to see if, can I read a book. I mean, obviously they need to do checks and make sure that you are safe to be around children. But one of the things that I've done, which I loved, was go in and read, do a story time, read books to children. Or when I was in corporate life, we used to be part of a helping children to read. So we'd go in every couple of weeks to the school and we would read to a child or have them read to us, which was just the most amazing experience. I also, I'm a volunteer coach. So actually, some of my coaching and leadership skills, I've volunteered those as part of mentorship programs for a number of charities, which again is a little bit of a way of giving back, which is, well, I know I'm good at leadership mentoring. That's why people pay me to do it. But it's something that charities can't always afford. So sometimes looking at what it is that you do in your day-to-day life and saying, where might this be useful? I remember when I worked in a bank in the Isle of Man, so many years ago. And one of the things that I offered there was a free budgeting course at a local community centre, because we all have to budget, even home budgets, we all have to make them work and understand how they balance. And yet, as having worked in banking for so many years, budgeting was kind of something I was pretty used to. So I went and delivered free courses on a Saturday morning just for like 45 minutes to help people understand how to better deal with just the basics of their finances, just getting through a month and getting it to balance. So I think there can be lots of things. And sometimes you can just put it out there. Care homes are always looking for people that are willing to come in and just sit with somebody and hear their story, just listen to people, or wider community elements where people just want to be heard. As we've said often on this show, I think at our base, people want to be listened to, they want to be understood, and they want to be respected. And sometimes it can be as formal as going and volunteering, and other times it can just be taking advantage of the moment. So when you see somebody and you're sat in you just have an opportunity to start a conversation, start it. That might be the only conversation that person's had that day, and you'd be amazed at the impact it has.
I love everything that you're sharing. And I think you've given people some great ideas of things that they can do, ways that they can give back. I think people start to get panicked because they think it's just about money. And of course, money is is needed for a lot of the organizations, but they need people too. They need able-bodied people who are interested in listening. That's a huge one. So
Mhm.
many times I know, even for myself behind this green screen, you really need somebody to talk to, because everyone thinks you have it all together all the time. And that's not the case. And if you think about somebody who's been in isolation in a care home, for example, or maybe they're getting medical treatment, maybe they're homebound, whatever the case might be, they probably are going through a lot and would love to have someone to speak with. And that's a great way to get involved. How did you feel when you were doing these things?
I loved it. I mean, one, there was that real sense of that sense of community. I think that you actually felt like you were um, adding some value. I guess because I'd spent so many years in kind of corporate life and in banking. So, you know, there's always that expectation that you're one of those cold-hearted bankers that's not interested in anybody. And so it was nice to be able to rebalance for myself and go, no, actually, I'm a more rounded human being, as we all are, as you know, most of my colleagues were. But it allowed you to also see how you might be able to take something that you take for granted. And I think this is one of the things that puts us off volunteering. We don't feel like we're going to be good enough. And that's because the things we already know how to do, we know how to do. So we start to undervalue them because we know how to do them. So we're like, well, surely everyone else knows how to do this. But when we think back, it's like, have we always known how to do this? Or were we taught it as part of our job or part of a hobby that we had, part of an activity that we had? And so when you look at it, for somebody else who's never come into contact with it, what you know could be really useful. Or even down to one of my friends started this last year and I loved it. She used to randomly, once a month, pick somebody that she was connected with and just handwrite them a card. For no other reason than, isn't it lovely to have a handwritten card turn up through your door? And I loved that idea. And actually, the impact that had, I know when I got my card, I was like, thrilled. We talk all the time, but it was like, how lovely that you took the time to sit down and write. And I reflect on that, every year at Christmas. I always make sure that for our elderly relatives, including my elderly relatives on my ex-husband's side, that I take time to give them an update. The wider family, not like my grandparents and things, but the wider family, give them an update on what we've been doing and share some pictures and ask how they're going. And it never fails to humble me how grateful they are that you've taken time to just write, to just share a photograph, to just do something, because we're very busy often in our lives, all of us, and we all get to it, don't you? So you go, where's the time gone? Has it got to the weekend again? And maybe it was like 2 minutes since I was here last time. And that's the same for a lot of us, but not for all of us. For some people, particularly maybe the elderly, their time goes slower and they haven't got as much to fill it. So if we can find a way of filling that, whether it's writing a letter, going and spending some time with them, reading a book, listening to their story, the impact is immeasurable, I think. And it's not just the elderly. I think there's so many places where we can add value. One of the things that I loved that I did recently was went and did a number of free talks for teenagers, so people that were looking at doing their exams, about to leave school, getting ready for deciding if they wanted to do the higher education or get ready for college, and also some younger, like 15 and 16. And it was amazing to be given the opportunity to go and talk to these amazing children and people that are going to be our future. And they were from underprivileged areas, and it was heartbreaking as well as rewarding to see that some of them had already written themselves off. Some of them had already decided that there was nothing better meant for them. And you kind of think that's devastating to hear. And I kind of started my speech, and there was one girl who really stood out for me, because she was very much she'd got, her sass was dialed up big style. She was kind of all that in a packet of crisps. And she started off, like, when I first went in, and knew she was going to be the toughest person in the audience. So when I asked them, like, what is it you guys want to be? What's your dream? Where do you want to get to? And I remember she looked at me and she was like, I want to be a millionaire, miss. And that's kind of how she said it. I was like, wow, we're going to go well here. And I was like, it's brilliant. At what? And she was like, sorry. And I went, at what? And I was like, I don't understand. I said, well, being a millionaire is an output, but it's as a result of being something. So that might be an artist, it might be a pop star, it might be an actor, it might be a business person, it might be a lottery winner, but it is as a result of doing something else. So what is it that's going to be the burning desire that's in you that you're going to make you catapult you into being that millionaire? Because you can absolutely do that, but you've got to start with that impulse. And they kind of sat there and then thought about it a little bit. And a bit later on, as we were sharing, I asked people to kind of do a bit of an exercise. And what I saw was people were like, instead of writing down, it was like, what's important to you, what's in you? They were kind of looking around at like what other people might think of it. And I shared with them, I don't mean to be harsh on this, but at the minute you're looking at the people either side of you for confirmation that what you're putting down is acceptable, that what you are going to say is your desire is going to be understood and accepted by everybody. And I don't mean to be harsh, but the reality is, in 10 years' time, the likelihood is that the people around you in this room now will not be part of your circle at that point. So you really need to dig inward and start to take your validation from inside, not from outside, because your world will keep turning. And I say that, and I said that to them, I say that with the fact that one of my best friends has been my best friend since I was 4. So she was sat next to me in a room like this, and she's still sat next to me now, and I'm really grateful for that. But the wider group of us are no longer so well connected. And I got to the end of the session, and people were really lovely, and they said, it's been really useful. And I said, well, if it's been useful, that's great. What would be your takeaway? And the girl, bless her, who'd been, all that at the start with the Want to Be a Millionaire Miss, said, I've taken away that I really need to believe in myself. And my heart couldn't have been more full of joy. And I genuinely hope, and I said this to her, genuinely hope you really have taken that away, because you do need to believe in yourself. Because I believe in you, I believe you can do it, but you've got to turn that inward. And I think if we can go and spread that wider, imagine the impact we could have.
What a fabulous story and experience. Thank you for sharing that. And when you just told us what she said to you, my heart kind of like stopped for a moment, thinking about how that you changed someone's perspective. You gave someone hope and inspiration. And if that was the only thing that came out of that experience, that in and of itself is worthwhile.
Absolutely. And I think, they're the bits. I think sometimes we hold ourselves back because we think we might not be able to have a big enough impact, but we just never know the impact we're having. We never know if just smiling at somebody might be the thing that they just needed on that day. It could be as small as that. I was on a train a few years ago now, and the lady sat opposite me at the table looked like she was having a bad day, and we were on the commuter train in. So it was like, wow,
this is gonna get worse.
We're gonna go downhill all the way if we're not careful. And so I kind of like made eye contact and thought, I'm just going to see if I can start a conversation with her and just see how it's going. So I did start a conversation. What's going on today? What are you heading into town for, etc. And it turned out she'd got a big presentation that she'd got to do, and she was already in a bad space. And anyway, we chatted away the whole way in. I gave her a couple of suggestions that I hoped might help. And we got to the end, and she was like, can I take your business card? And I was like, yeah, please do. I mean, I didn't chat to you for that reason, but by all means, yeah, do. And then she texted me later on that day and said, do you know what? That's exactly what I needed. I'd gone in dreading the whole thing. I was making it bigger in my head than it needed to be. And I felt like I was on a downward spiral where I was going to just go in and prove to everybody that I wasn't ready to do this. She knew the fact that you took the time, you didn't get dismissed by the fact that my face said, go away, don't talk to me. She said, and you were just like, you decided you were going to chat anyway, but you did it in such a friendly and kind way that it was like, okay, I feel a bit bad if I don't talk to her. she said that you managed to just get me out of my fog. And I think sometimes we can all do that, can't we? We can all get in that fog where we've gone inward, and then we've projected everything that we are fearful of outward on the world, and we assume everybody else is thinking it. But very often it's only us. So, and I think when we advocate for others, others start to advocate for us because they realize the impact it had. And then they'll go, I'm going to go and do that tomorrow. I'm going to see if I can put that smile on somebody else's face. And I think it's amazing the impact. I think if everybody has got that one teacher, haven't they? That one teacher that gave them their breakthrough. That most, unfortunately, have also got that one teacher that held them back and told them what to do. But this is about advocating for people. I think you look at that one that saw the something in you, and helped you to believe. And I think if we can all hold on to that one instead of, sadly, we very often hold on to the one that told us we weren't good enough, that we weren't going to make it, that we weren't going to get there, and like everybody else, I had both of those teachers. I had the one that said that your smile will get you so far, but eventually you'll realize so you have to put the work in as well. I was like, I kind of thought I'd get away with like always just being cheering. But I had the other one, Mr. Ashley, who, God rest his soul, isn't with us anymore. But he saw something in me and my friend, and he was always encouraging us to be ourselves, to trust ourselves, to even we might not have been the brightest children in the school, we might not have been the most academic, but he encouraged us to always try. And he used to ask us and include us in a way that didn't make you feel like you were being exposed. And I'm always immensely grateful that I was given the privilege of having him as my teacher at such a young age.
I don't even know where to begin from what you shared because there's so much in there. And it is about having an open heart and being willing to help other people. And that story you shared about when you were on the train, many times, and I've had this myself, we are so excited or so nervous or fearful or something about a situation, and we tell the people we're closest to when we can't get what we need from them because they're doing whatever it is they're doing. And yet a stranger will give us that encouragement or that support or just listen to us. And also what you said about people seeing something in us. I know even here on this platform, Ian Palm Turner saw something in me. Madeline Chan saw something in me, and they're complete strangers, and now they're really good friends. So you never know how your behavior is going to impact somebody else. And I love that you are so open, and you took something that could have been, well, I'll just sit here and mind my business and sit at the table. She's in a miserable mood. Now we have this negative energy, and you changed the energy.
Yeah, I think energy is such a massive thing, isn't it? We all know ourselves. I remember when I worked at one of the big software firms. So I worked for Sage, and I was their UK head of sales. And I carried a massive target. So my target was, I think, about 75% of the UK's target. If I missed, we missed. So people would, it was a huge organization, thousands of people there. And people would look, if you ever went in and didn't look like you got the biggest smile on your face and like the world, it was just Willy Wonka's chocolate factory all of the time. People were like, have we got a problem, Kim? What's happening with the number? I'm like, no, I've just got a headache. I was like, sorry. Well, I fell out with my husband, but it doesn't matter what it was. It's like, so I kind of learned to go in and whatever was going on inside to just go, okay, show face. You've got to smile. You've got to be present. You've got to be there. Because the impact you could have, particularly in the role that I did, could be massive. If I went in and I looked like I was having a bad day, we'd all have a bad day. Whereas if I went in and believed we could have a good day, we all had a good day. And I think if we understand that as leaders, we can go, actually, we can change the energy. But we then have to recognize that sometimes we've also got to find a space to fill that energy up. I remember somebody wrote to me a while ago. I'd written an article about imposter syndrome and how to overcome it. And they'd been working for me during a massive transformation, which was a really tough time for everybody. We were doing major redundancy programs. We were having to deal with redress with the regulator. We'd got the press camped on our doorstep. I mean, you name it, it was happening. And unbeknownst to the people at work, I was also going through a divorce. But I was the leader. So you kind of came in every day and you listened to people and you gave them your time. And it was only when I shared elements of that in the article that he reached out to say, do you know, we were all in awe of you when we worked for you, because nothing ever seemed to stop you being able to give us time. Nothing was ever so bad that you wouldn't be there for us, that you didn't have a kind word or a smile for somebody. You didn't have an opportunity to try and make their day better. He said, we always thought you were like a swan. He said, now we realize how much like a swan you were, because you were being graceful to everybody else, but you must have been paddling really hard to stay above water. And I was like, but so many of us are. So many of us are. And it always reminds me in a little bit of kind of like what Robin Williams said. It's like, some of the people that make us laugh the most are doing that because they know what it feels like to feel alone, to feel lost. And so they compensate for that by making sure that nobody else is feeling lost in their presence. So I think there's advocating for others does that for us when in those moments where we might be feeling a little bit down ourselves, putting the other person there. I know for me personally, putting the other person there allows me to get through the tough times, find a purpose, find something that is in my gift to do that allows me to get to the end of the day and say, today I added some value, even if it was just a little bit, but I added some value. There was a purpose, there was a worth.
And I think what you're talking about is, in addition to being an incredible human being, you're demonstrating leadership. You're putting your team, others, ahead so that you can all collectively go to where it is you have to go. And so many times in an organization, there are people who are doubting themselves and they're looking to their leader to help inspire them, to let them know they are good enough. They do have what it takes. And that's what you were doing.
Oh, bless you. Thank you. I mean, I always try to, because I think that is our job as a leader. I believe our job as a leader, and it kind of comes back to what I learned when I was hairdressing, but it's held me true for the last 30 years, is, as a hairdresser, people come to you and you've got to listen to what it is they really want. You've got to try and help them to achieve that, to achieve their dream, their goal, what they're looking for. And you want them to leave feeling better for having spent time with you. Leave being the best version of themselves as a result of that interaction. And I think that is basically leadership. As leaders, if we can, for every one of the people that we lead, if we can listen to what's really important to them, if we can help them to find a way to achieve that dream, to become that person, whatever it is that they're wanting to do, and to have them leave us eventually as a better version of themselves, to be their Mr. Ashley. That's kind of been my dream for all the people that I lead, is that at some point I will become somebody's Mr. Ashley, the person that saw something in them and gave them the courage and the confidence to keep going and to borrow that belief until they found their own.
And as an extension of what you're saying, which is all right on point, we don't know who's looking at us or looking to us or watching us and taking something away from us. It's really amazing, because sometimes we are so into our heads, we're so focused on the job at hand or the task or getting the sales, whatever it might be, and people are watching and they're learning and they're taking something away. And I'll give an example. It's a very small example, but it just happened yesterday. I love my workout at Solid Core. I talk about it all the time. I think there's only 14 benches, so there's only 14 people in the class. And I take it really seriously. I walk half a mile or a mile before I get there, like I'm on the parking lot walking around, mentally preparing myself because I know how hard it's going to be and how I have to show up. And what I found is, the coach will say, look to your left, look to your right, say hello to your team members. And many times the team members, they don't look, and I'm looking ready to say hello. So now I feel kind of guarded about saying hello. Like I'll turn like a slight thing to see if someone's going to say hello. Well, anyway, long story short, there was someone next to me 2 days ago, and it ended up they were next to me yesterday. And when I walked in and went to the bench, she said to me, I have to tell you something. You inspired me so much yesterday. I pushed myself harder watching you. And here I thought that she was kind of cold and distant. And so we make a judgment about someone, but she actually was nervous and felt insecure. And she said, keep doing what you're doing because it pushes me to push myself. So, like, you just don't know. You don't know.
What an amazing story, Dr. Jacalyn, and what an impact you had. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with a good friend who talked about how we make judgments on what's going on. So they were sharing that they used to get really, really frustrated. Their partner worked evenings, and when they got up in the morning, the microwave would always have a couple of seconds left on it. And it really bothered them, because they were like, they can't even be bothered to wait for the microwave to finish. And in their head, this was it started to become something that was around lack of care, lack of consideration. But fortunately, rather than get into an argument and pass the judgment on, they decided to go and ask the question, can I ask what's going on with the microwave? Because every day when I get up, there's 5 seconds left on it, or 3, or whatever it is. And I just want to understand what's going on. And it turns out that their partner understood that the microwave made a really loud bing. And what they didn't want to do was wake them up when they came in and heated up their dinner before they went to bed. So instead of it being done through a lack of consideration, it was being done out of sheer consideration. But the problem was neither one of them had talked about it. So I think if we can take a step back from what we've perceived, what we've judged to be what's going to happen, and instead ask the question, not in a confrontational way, but in a, can I just ask kind of why are we doing this over here? I'm just interested to kind of understand. We may find that it's because the person's nervous, not because the person's judging, or because the person's being considerate, not inconsiderate. Because again, we place everything on the judgment we've made versus the reasoning behind their decision.
So true. Absolutely. We just live in a bubble sometimes and think that somebody's doing something just to torment us or just to annoy us. And meanwhile, it's something completely different, but we need to be able to have those conversations and to listen. And something else I wanted to talk about, we had mentioned this earlier, is when we are advocating for others in whatever capacity it might be. I know I did this. You want to be the best that you can in helping people. And so I run a support group. I think it's been about 4 years. And in the beginning, it was in person, obviously. And I would be like, how many people are there? Are there 15 people? If there aren't 15 people, I must not be good at what it is I'm doing. And it turns out that sometimes there only be one person, but that one person really needed to share. And so it wasn't about the numbers. It wasn't about how many people were talking. It was just about providing an opportunity to give somebody that space where they felt safe to share. So that was a big transition for me. And when I look at volunteering, or how many people are in the audience when I'm giving a speech, or if I'm coaching someone during the pandemic, I did a lot of coaching for free, and I did a lot of yoga classes for free. How many people are there on the Zoom? What? There's only 3 people. I must not be a good teacher. It has something to do with that.
So true. Unfortunately, in this society where everything is about how many people we've liked, how many people have followed us, how many people have done this, we've started to get our validation from those numbers. But we may have millions and millions of people following us, but we don't impact them in the slightest. They just scroll through. And we may only have one person that follows us, but we've made an impact that changes their life, that allows them to go on and do something that they never thought that they could achieve. So I think we've got to change the measure, haven't we? We've got to look at what is it that we're measuring ourselves on, and if we can impact just one person, it's worth doing. Because if all of us can just impact one person positively, that'd change the world. Instead, we go, well, I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to be able to get 5 million people that like what it is that I've done. Well, they might have liked it. Did they do anything with it? Or did they just go, as I do, I'm massively guilty for this. Like, doing nothing with it, scrolling and liking. And sometimes it's because I want to be supportive. And I'm like, we've been supportive. You don't really know what they said. You paid attention to it. You just went, maybe I'm just a really bad social media scroller. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I really will pay attention to what the person did, and I'll do something with it. So it's not all the time. But you look at it and think, how many times when I'm doing that, I'm sat on my own and I'm just chilling and I'm not really paying attention, but I'm being part of society, because that's what we do. We scroll and we scroll and like. But then we turn inward on ourselves and make that judgment that have we had as many likes? If people watch what we've done, well, if they haven't, then clearly what we've done has not been impactful. But is that really true? I don't know. I think we've got to be more open-minded, haven't we, as to how we judge ourselves.
Yes, for sure. And I know that you post often, I post often, and something that really helped me change my perspective about the value of follows and comments. People will reach out in a different way and say, hey, text you or WhatsApp you. I saw your post and I just wanted to let you know XYZ, but they didn't comment or they didn't like, and I remember in the beginning, I would be like, oh, you saw it, but you didn't comment. No, I didn't want to comment. I wanted to contact you directly. I thought, oh, interesting. And there are people out there who are watching, who are believing, who are inspired, who are motivated, but they're not giving that feedback directly through social media. And that's okay, but they don't feel comfortable doing it. And isn't it more meaningful when they reach out to you directly, or they take what you've shared and they help somebody else in another way?
Oh, I love that. I remember it was a social media thing. I met somebody, they booked into my calendar. And when I looked at their profile, I was like, oh, bless their heart. They're going to regret this. They clearly didn't expect me. They were some amazing profile. And anyway, we connected and we hit it off, and we got on famously. And it wasn't until much later, we've become really good friends, it wasn't until much later that they shared with me that they'd had to pluck the courage up for weeks to reach out and see if we could have a conversation. And I was like, you're joking. I looked at your profile and thought somebody made a mistake on your behalf. And you were going to regret it and go, okay, well, that was a waste. That was a waste of makeup. So it's funny, the impression that we give, because I looked at this person's profile and thought they are never going to be interested in having a conversation with me. They looked at my profile and thought she's never going to give us her time. And yet the reality is we both had that opposing view and both would really have liked to talk to each other. And now 3 years on, we're really, really good friends. So I think sometimes we've just got to be brave and ask the question, because you don't know what the answer is until you've asked it. And what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is somebody goes, no thanks, it's not really for me, or they ignore your request. But I remember doing this. I wanted to reach out to somebody and I was like, oh, they're never going to say yes. I would have sat there going, get really nervous about myself. And then I thought, well, all I'm actually doing is asking if they're willing to connect and have a conversation. I'm not trying to sell them anything. It was literally somebody that I really admired and I would love to learn more from. But it took me a while. It took me a good couple of days to work up the courage to go and do that. And then I remember sitting in my lounge and I'd written the message. It'd taken me forever. I'd written the message and I was still getting a little bit hot and uncomfortable, going, no, but what if they say no? Or what if they ignore me? And then I thought about it and I was like, right, Kim, you're in a house on your own at the time with a 4-year-old. So who's actually going to know? Because unless I run upstairs and wake my child up to say, Mummy's just about to message this person and they've said no, she's never going to know. No, as long as I don't tell anybody else, they're never going to know. And I doubt the person that I'm messaging, if they're going to choose to ignore me or say no, is going to rush out and tell anybody, because I'm clearly not going to be of any impact to them. So they're not going to bother telling anybody else. So no one's going to know. So I'm not going to really lose anything by taking the risk. And so I kind of pressed the button. I think I then ran off and got myself a cup of tea and biscuit and thought about kind of what had happened. But they came back. And they were really gracious and were like, thank you so much for taking the time to share with me what you found value in what I do. And so we did connect. So I just would encourage us all to say, think about what's the worst that can happen. So the worst that could happen in that situation is they said no or they ignored me. But the best that could happen is that they said yes and they would connect. Well, if they said no or they ignored me, I was no worse off than I was if I hadn't contacted them in the first place. I still wasn't connected with them. I still was never going to be connected with them. But if they said yes, then I had a chance to be in a better position than I was if I did nothing. And I think it's just changing that mindset piece, saying if I don't do this, I'm going to be in exactly the same space as I am now. If I do, I'm going to be no worse off. But there's an inkling, there's a chance, there's a moment that I could be in a better place.
Brilliant. I love that. I think it really is in alignment with your TEDx speech about fear and hope. And to your point, and I'll have you expound upon this, but we typically go with fear. We go with the negative side, that the negative that is going to happen instead of the positive. And just a quick story that I've shared before, and then I want to have you share with our audience about your TEDx speech. I was asked to speak at this event for the Crohn's Colitis Foundation, and I was really nervous about doing it because I was in a flare with ulcerative colitis at the time, and so I had to take a couple days to prepare myself, not eat, etc. I'm not going to go into the details. And so I got up to make the speech, and it was about 11 minutes long, and just about, you see me here looking the way that I look, and you might make whatever judgments, but what you don't know is I've been running to the bathroom 40 times a day, and the fact that I'm even able to be on this stage for this time is unbelievable. And so anyway, I was really nervous. I felt so stupid. I thought, oh, why am I sharing this? Nobody wants to hear about it. But you would be safe at an event for the Crohn's Colitis Foundation, one would think. And long story short, at the end of the event, I went into the restroom and there was a young woman there, and she came up, and I knew she was a patient. She had that look about her, when you're on some of the biologics, we all have that look. And anyway, she said that she didn't want to come to the event, and that her parents had said she had to, and it would be good for her. And that when she heard me speak, that I gave her a reason to live. And I literally just started crying, and I gave her a hug, and I thought, oh my gosh. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, you look like you have it all together, and you understand what it's like to be a patient. And she said, I have been so afraid and so ashamed and so embarrassed. And now she's extremely active in the community, in the foundation, and she's helping other people. She's got her own teams for the events that we have. And so she's passed it on to helping other people. And had I not done that event, maybe she wouldn't be doing what she's doing, the other people doing what they're doing. So the point is, you've got to get out of your own way, and instead of projecting inward, project outward, because you give other people hope instead of living in fear. And I would love for you to share about your journey, for people who don't know it, about your TEDx speech and the content of it. And I'd love to play it, but of course YouTube would love to shut me down again when I did that. So
and what a great story, and what a great impact that you had on that person, because we're all looking for someone who's been through what we've been through, so that we can have some hope. And I guess it's one of the things that I talk about in my TEDx, and it comes from sharing my journey, and having written my letter to Scarlett when I didn't think I was going to survive. And when I came out, I said that, you know, I was going to try and understand why I'd been so unkind to myself, why I had been so negative about who I was and how I showed up in the world. And I spent the next 5 years really researching what it is that we do. And what I found from that is that if we think about it, as human beings, we believe that we tell the truth. What if I was to share with you, it's not the truth, it's our truth. And it's our truth based on how we're feeling. Because if we're fearful of something, it hasn't happened yet. We've got to imagine it. We've got to think about what that's going to look like and feel like. We've got to imagine, because it hasn't happened yet. But the same is also true of what we're hopeful for. What we're hopeful for hasn't happened yet. So again, we have to imagine what it's going to look like and feel like and sound like. And then we get to decide, which one are we choosing to focus on? Well, unfortunately, our brains are still prehistoric. So we're pre-designed to assume that what we're fearful of is more credible and more likely than what we're hopeful for. And millions of years ago, that did us good, because what we were fearful of possibly was trying to eat us. So it was a good idea to probably err on the side of caution and assume that what we're fearful of is more likely. But we're not living in prehistoric times anymore. So we now get to choose, you know, what we're fearful of. We're fearful we're going to get it wrong. We're fearful we're not going to be good enough. We're fearful that people are going to judge us. But we're hopeful that there might be something in us that's there to shine. We're hopeful that we can make an impact on the world, that we can impact somebody else and help them to live a better version of their life. Well, when it comes to those two, both are imagined in the same brain. They're the things I imagine. And I know I've created both of them, that fear that I'm not good enough, the fear that people are going to judge me and find me not worthy, is created by my brain in the same way that the hope that I impact just one person and make a difference is created in that same brain. And I get to choose which one of those I now focus on, because neither one of them is more credible than the other. I created them. So whatever I use to discount one, I have to be able to use to discount the other. And it all comes down to what I choose to believe. And so I choose to believe that being open, being honest, being vulnerable may get me judged by lots of people. But if there's the hope that it impacts just one person to get out of their own way and go and shine their light, then it's worth the risk.
Absolutely. And I love that word that you use, vulnerability, because some people are very closed off, right? Maybe all of us have been closed off at some time. But when we are vulnerable, we are inviting people to come in. And that is scary for some people as well. What if you see me as I really am?
It's hugely scary, because we've been told, I mean, particularly any of us that have been in corporate life, never show your vulnerability, like never let your guard down, never let anybody see weakness. And yet the reality is, every one of us, everywhere, is vulnerable about something. It may be a different thing, but every one of us is vulnerable about something. So the moment that we share a vulnerability, we actually become less vulnerable. You know, because the minute I share with people that any of the things about me, whether it's that I had imposter syndrome, whether it's that I've been divorced lots of times, whether it's any of the disasters of my life, any of my vulnerabilities, then people can't really use them against me, because it's like, okay, so you're going to tell people? Well, I've already told people. So it's like, what you're going to judge me and find me lacking? Don't worry, I do that for you. I judge me and find me lacking against all of those things. That's why I'm vulnerable about them. So you can't judge me any harsher than I judge myself. I promise. I could make that a kind of like a PhD in how to talk to yourself. So you kind of put it out there. It's not saying I don't value other people's opinions. It's not saying that I don't want people to like me, because I do. But actually, when it comes to my vulnerability, I already know I'm vulnerable in that space. I already find myself lacking in that space. I'm already upset with myself for being in that space. So if I share it with others, I can't feel any worse about myself than I do already. But maybe in doing so, I can help somebody else start to share their vulnerability and create that safe space. Because actually, once we get it out of our head, once we share with other people that actually this is how we feel, and you get their feedback on what they've observed. And I think I've shared this on here before, so forgive me sharing the story again, but I did a speech and I stood up and I wanted to run away. I was terrified, even though I've been speaking for years. And I shared with the audience that I wanted to run away, and that I couldn't, clearly, because it would be massively unprofessional. I would never come back from it. So I couldn't do that, but I could give myself permission to share that that's how I felt, and hope that that would be enough to allow me to take that next step and to share with them what I was here to share with them. And at the end, I had people queuing to talk to me, which was surreal, because I was like, it's just me. I've just told you all I'm really vulnerable, and I don't believe in myself. But they stayed, and they wanted to talk, and they said, you stood there in a bright red dress with bright red lipstick and a huge smile on your face, looking like nothing in the world has ever bothered you. And yet when you shared that, we knew that you were being honest. And I was like, it's true. I had somebody reach out after they'd seen a YouTube video, which is an element of kind of what I put into my TEDx talk. And they reached out to say, do you know what? I'm 1,000% more likely to hire you now than I ever was before. And I said, okay, that's lovely. Why is that? Because the 6-minute story that I shared was about my vulnerability. And she said, because your profile picture and your profile itself looks like you've never had a knock in your life, that everything's just gone swimmingly, that you've lived the perfect, easy life that you appear to. And yet now, having listened to that story and seen it, you've had quite a checkered background. You've had a number of plot twists. And so you do know what it's like to overcome. And I was like, yeah, I do. But that doesn't mean to say I have to choose to not now choose to show up however I want to. I said, I'll be honest, I learned many years ago, if I look confident, people will be kinder to me and people will treat me as if I am confident. So whenever I'm feeling really unconfident, the dress gets brighter, the lipstick gets brighter, and the smile gets wider, because I find that makes people more likely to treat me confidently.
That's a great share. Thank you. It's almost like we need a referee because we are beating ourselves up full time. It's like, you're good, you're not good. Hey, cut it out here. let's come together.
Come on, give me 5 minutes here. It's like, you two, back off. And it's true. And sometimes we need, and that's why I talk to people, my biggest recommendation for everybody is get yourself a Thrive Hive. So your Thrive Hive is the 4 or 5 people that, and they all need to be different and different types of people, but that have got your best interests at heart. They've got your back, that they care. Because sometimes we need to get out of our head and we need to go and run that past somebody else. And within my Thrive Hive, I've got the person who's the tough love, the one who's going to tell me to get over myself, kick me in the pants, and get out there and go and do it. But I've also got the person who's going to sugar the pill. It's kind of like, when I'm not ready for tough love yet, that they're gonna go, all right, I'll listen to you first, and then I'll pass you over to tough love over there that's going to tell you to get on with it. But it's amazing the impact that has, because when we spend too much time with ourselves and in our heads, it's so plausible. What we tell ourselves internally is so plausible. It doesn't take long for us to make it our reality. So having that group around us where we can say, this is what I'm thinking, and judge their reaction, get their feedback. I've shared before that people, when I asked them for their feedback, said, we think you're brave and fearless. And I was like, why is that? And it's for a number of things. They're like, you're willing to go on and share really vulnerable parts of your story with people. And you're also willing to up sticks and move around the country. You're willing to give people parts of yourself that, you know, we would be worried that people would judge and find lacking, and we think that that's brave and fearless. Now, and it's really interesting. I thought I was flighty and a little bit stupid, so it's like, and I thought that's what everybody else thought of me, that I was flighty and a little bit stupid. So I realized that those internal words had become my blueprint, but the external words, how they made me show up in the world, were very different. And so having that Thrive Hive allows me to get some of that out, to be able to share those thoughts. And sometimes you share that thing that you've been telling yourself for days and it felt so plausible. And the minute you say it out loud to another human being, it sounds differently to how it sounds in your head. And sometimes you can do that and go, do you know, it's all right. You don't need to give me any feedback. I can work out for myself that that's ludicrous. So thank you for just giving me the sounding board. But sometimes what you need is for them to give you a different perspective, because as in a world, we live in a world of polarity. For every up, there's a down. For every left, there's a right. So for everything we view, there's the other element of that 360. And so that Thrive Hive can help us to see things from that different perspective. And when we see things from a different perspective, sometimes things that we thought were obstacles become opportunities.
I wish that we could just clone what you're just saying, because it's so meaningful and so impactful. And you were sharing just a little while ago that you beat yourself up on a full-time basis, as do I. And people probably watching or listening wouldn't even believe that, but it's actually, you just admitted it, I'm admitting it. And something that you shared about that Thrive Five is that we don't believe that we have value in certain areas, and we believe people see that we're no good at whatever it is, when in fact it's the opposite. And then when they tell us what they think, sometimes we don't even believe it. We're like, what? You're lying, come on, what do you want?
It's,
But
yeah, the thrift shop brush off, isn't it? People give you a compliment and you're like, oh, it was just a fiver. Like, thank you. Just say thank you. Stop buying it away.
I love, what did you say, those thrift shop?
The thrift shop brush off is what I call it. It's like when people give you a compliment and it's almost like somebody's handed you a live grenade. It's like you can't possibly accept it. Like, it's just gotta go. It's gotta go. So you go, this, oh, it's just a fiver from like the charity shop or something. It's like, just say thank you. And I say that knowing how hard it is, and I still rubbish at doing it myself. But I now try really hard to say thank you, and in my head go, it's just a fiver. Because I still have to try and bat it away. Because we do, don't we? Because actually we don't want to be wrong. So while we've been telling ourselves that we're rubbish and everybody thinks that we're not worthy, or not pretty enough, or not slim enough, or not attractive enough, or just not enough of whatever we're not enough of, then actually when people start to tell us stuff that is the opposite of that, well, that's going to make us wrong. So even though it's something we want to hear, it's going to make us wrong. So there's this little part of our brain that goes, no, reject that, because at least we know what we are. They're just being kind to us, but we know the reality. So we create this. I mean, maybe it's just me. I'm just a crazy person all by myself. But I see it, and I see it in the clients that I'm talking to, where you're like, okay, and how's that dialogue working for you? Because we create a narrative that is the story of our life, and then we share that narrative with everybody, and we make it real. And I'm like, okay, so but there's an alternate way of looking at that. So you could look at it and say, I'll just take myself as an example. I could say I'm not qualified enough. I didn't follow the right route into the career that I had. I'd got no degree. I'd got no A levels. I'd got nothing that said that I should be there. And for many, many years, and I still find myself doing it occasionally now, I still play that story. I don't deserve to be here for all of these reasons, and I'm really genuinely sorry. And I know this is going to be what you think of me. But the reality is, I could reword that. Puddin, thank you for joining in. I could reword that narrative to say, because I didn't have the qualifications and the education that was expected, I knew I had to work really hard to overcome the fact that my start point wasn't the expected one. And that became the platform that springboarded me into lifelong learning, into being the person that would try and do anything new, that would take on new lessons whenever I could. So instead of it being, I still don't deserve this, you've taken the same piece and just reworded it slightly to say, actually, the reality is, no, I didn't. I didn't have that. So why did I end up on the board? Well, I ended up on the board because I knew I didn't have that. And so I worked even harder. I took every opportunity. I said no to nothing. Everybody was like, we need somebody to go and do this. I'll do it. I'll give it a go. I don't know how to do it, but I'll give it a go. I'll give it a shot. I'll go on the roller coaster because you need a leader to go on it, even though I'm terrified of heights. I'll give that a shot. So I think sometimes it's what do we do to rewrite that narrative? And if we can't rewrite it for ourselves, having those people around us and hearing their narrative on our life can help us see that different perspective.
And it also makes you a very interesting person. It makes you somebody that people admire and respect because you are doing the things that people dream of doing, but they can't get out of their own way to do it.
Oh, thank you. And I guess that's my reason for and I've shared it over the years with the people that I've led, which is, don't sit there, I've run call centers and all kinds of things. Don't sit in the audience and think that you can't have anything that you want. Because if you're sat there thinking, when I got my directorship relatively young, if you're sat there thinking, well, you can't be where I am because you haven't had the education or you haven't got the background, I guarantee that probably 75% of the people in this room are significantly more educated than I am. So don't let that be the thing that holds you back. Instead, let it be the thing that propels you forward, because on paper, I don't deserve to be here. But the amount of work and time and effort and experience is what got me through the door. So I think it's that piece that says, actually, you may not be able to go through life the way we perceive it is supposed to be planned. We may not make it through in the way that we expect. Everybody expects us to get there, but that doesn't mean to say we can't make it through. I think, when we look at it, and now, whenever I'm presented with a challenge, of which, as you know, there's been many. I could joke about the car accidents, the illnesses, the divorces, the hurricane. It's good. Life's given me plenty of plot twists, but that's what they are. They're a plot twist, and every plot twist is meant to teach us something. So now, whenever anything comes my way like that, I just look at it and go, okay, plot twist. Let's see what this is going to do. Let's see what I'm supposed to learn, or what I've not yet learned that actually you've been trying to teach me for a long time. And a plot twist feels so much easier to overcome than a challenge or an obstacle, because a plot twist is written in a book. But the reality is we are all the author of our own life. So if we don't like what's going on, it's time to take back the pen and say, okay, if I don't like this, what do I want this plot twist to end up taking me towards?
I'm speechless with that analogy. That was so spot on. Will you remember that? You have to write that down.
I do use that one quite a lot. It works for me. I think as human beings, the one thing that connects us all, irrelevant of our age, our race, our gender, our culture, is that we all teach and we all learn through stories. We've been doing it since the caveman drawings or the hieroglyphics. It's how we communicate, it's how we learn. And so turning all my analogies into ones that relate back to stories work for me, because that's how we learn. It's how we live. It's how we work, and actually translates into different cultures and different religions and different age groups, because we understand a story. We understand a plot twist. We understand characters, and when when characters turn up in a book, and I don't know how many people have done that. You're reading a book and you're really into it and you're loving every minute of it, and then all of a sudden Eric turns up and you're like, hold on, who's Eric? Where did Eric come from? Because he's written in the book as if he's been there for a while, and I have to go back a few pages and I'm like, no sign, there's no signpost for Eric. Eric's just landed in the middle of my book. And I always throws me off kilter for a little bit. And then eventually I can see where it works. And I guess for me, you know, I look at that sometimes, and when things land in my life or people land in my life and there was no signpost to them coming, I go, oh, okay, it's all right. It's just like when Eric turns up in a book, it'll make sense eventually. So just be open-minded to it. Just keep looking out for the signs of where this plot twist is trying to take you.
Eric, I'm always going to remember that. Eric is the plot twist, is the person who comes into your life or the experience that you weren't expecting. I think that's brilliant. And I also think we're actually over our time. We're really enjoying this conversation, but I really want to thank people who are still here with us, whether you're watching or listening. I also think that we have to manifest what it's going to be in our next book or in our book series or what that looks like. And I shared with you that I walk before I go to Solid Core, again, not a paid spokesperson. And I'm looking at real estate. I'm looking at real estate that there's a lot of space, there's a lot of office buildings, and I'm envisioning USA Global TV and Radio as an actual television station where we do virtual and we also have in person. And so as I'm walking around, I'm imagining, you know, the signage, can people, the visibility, can people see it from the highway? And then there's a beautiful building, all glass, and I'm thinking, well, we need it to be dark. Okay, well, do they have shades? Like, I'm actually going through the whole process. And I have the address of the building I want to be in. I have it memorized. And then I say to myself, that's so ridiculous. That's, you know, you're not in a position to do that yet. To your point, yet.
I love that you've remembered the yet, because it's true. The more we visualize it, and the better we visualize it, you know, when we can think about how it's going to feel and what are we going to see and what we're going to smell and what are people going to say, and really bring that, you know, really bring that to life. One of the things that I realized, life only makes sense in the rearview mirror. So when we're living it, it doesn't always make sense. But when we get through something and we get to look back at it, we go, oh, okay, that makes total sense. And then you realize when you look back at your life, how much of it you manifested. And I think for me, one of the hardest lessons that I learned is that we are both the hero and the nemesis of our own life. And what I mean by that is we are the person that manifested all the things that went well, but we're also the person that manifested all the things that didn't go well. And that's back to when we're thinking about, are we going to pick fear or hope? When we manifest the things that went well, when we think about it, it's because we really wished for them, we hoped for them, and we put all our energy into that hope, into that wish, into that dream. And when we think about all the things that have gone wrong, they were all the things that I was fearful of. They were all the things that I hoped would never happen. And I put too much energy into them. And so now when I find myself focusing on something that I don't want, I ask myself, what do I want instead? And then I try really hard to visualize what I want instead and really put effort into putting the energy into that. And it's making a huge difference. And I hope it makes a huge difference to anybody that tries it.
And I want to go back to your comment about plot twists. One plot twist that seems to come into our life, regardless of what book we're reading or we're writing, is money. And people have this perception or this connection or this dysfunction or this expectation about money that impacts the decisions that they make or the decisions they don't make or the opportunities they take or they don't take. And I speak to people on a regular basis. You know, I interview, I don't know how many people a week, 25 people a week or so. And at some point, money comes up. I don't have enough money. I can't do it. And I'm just wondering how we can look at money as just a plot twist, that if we look at it like that and not the ultimate controller of our behavior, what would our life look like? And that if maybe we're short of money today and that's kind of hanging over our head, that it's just one moment in time and there are other things that we can be doing instead of obsessing about that plot twist. What are your thoughts?
It's so true, you know, and I've been there. I've been on those moments where it's like, I don't know how to pay the bills. I don't know how to pay the mortgage. And you know, I've only got X in my purse, and how am I going to eke that out for me and my daughter to get to, you know, to get to the next payday? And yet we've been very lucky we've got there. But once I started to go, okay, I've only got this. instead of worrying about that, I'm going to go, what can I do to optimize it? How can I make the school holidays fun when actually we hadn't got any money at the time? Well, we can go for picnics. It doesn't cost me any more to feed my child on a picnic than it does to feed her at home. So I can do that. It just takes a bit more time and a bit more focus. I can make stuff from scratch with her, which then fills time because we're baking or we're cooking or we're creating. But again, one, it feeds us, and two, it doesn't cost so much money. And the minute that I did that, the minute that I made that switch, all of a sudden money started to come in, because I was no longer focused on that it wasn't coming in and just the negativity of there is nothing and I don't know how I'm going to do this. I was a piece that's going, actually, I'm just going to have to offer it up and say, I can't control this. So all I can do is deal with the bits I can control. And how do I make those fun? How do I focus on that energy? And it absolutely shifted for me in my life. And it wasn't long ago. It's been very recent. I'm not saying that means that I'm now really affluent. I'm not. I still occasionally find myself going, yeah, but what about next month? Then going, just get through this month. Trust that if I'm just being present and I'm doing the right thing and I'm focusing on what I can do, that the rest will come.
Thank you for being so transparent and sharing that. That really is very touching and inspiring in the same way, because I think where you put your effort, you're going to get results or you're not, depending what it is you're focused on. And for anybody out there who is struggling financially, who is going through a hard time, again, this is a moment in time, and how you react and what you do and what opportunities come your way. You're never going to know if you're just head down focused in on that, as opposed to being open and lifted and advocating for others. I really feel strongly that regardless of your situation, some people think it is just the rich who are supposed to give and help the people who are not on the same level. No, it's all of us advocating for one another.
I completely agree.
And I want to just say thank you to everybody who is watching our program. We usually have a lot of people, whether it's on the live or on the replay. We really do appreciate it. We'd love to hear what your authentic achievements are. I know, Kim-ADELE, you and I have been doing the show by ourselves, which is great. We always have good conversations, and I hope the audience is getting value. But we love to have people come on the show as well. So you can just go over to our website, usaglobaltv.com. Book your session. Kim-ADELE, as we close out for today, what would you like to leave the audience with, and how can people get in touch with you?
Thank you. Well, first, thank you for listening. The one thing that I would love for you to take away is, as you head into the rest of the new year, when you find yourself focusing on something you don't want, ask yourself immediately, what do I want? And focus on that. And the next time you get an opportunity to advocate for somebody else, or to start a conversation, or to just give them a smile, do that too, because those two things are going to be life-changing. And if you've got a story you'd like to share, if you've got an authentic achievement that you would like to share with the audience to inspire them, please do get in touch. You can get me directly, kim@kimadelerandall.com. You can find out more about what we're doing at www.authenticachievements.com. Or if you'd like to hear a little bit more about how to turn fear into hope and build brave belief, then listen to my TEDx, and I would love your feedback.
And Kim-ADELE, you are also an author. Let people know how they can purchase your books, and in general, what your books are about.
Of course, I always forget that. So I've got a few books. So they're all about mainly leadership or conflict management. They're all available on Amazon. So when you can find the details, there's an author page on authenticachievements.com. And I'm about to hopefully, or definitely in 2023, launch my latest book, which is called Authentic Achievements. And as soon as that's coming out, I will let you all know. But I'm very excited to be sharing that one, because we've got some amazing stories in there.
Good for you. Congratulations. That's excellent.
Thank you, Maggie.
All right. Well, goodbye to you temporarily until next time. And Pudding, is Pudding right there?
He is. Pud, you come and say hi.
Hi, Pudding.
Oh. Here we go.
Aww. Hi, Pudding.
Pudding the dog.
Hi, Pudding. Oh, looking right at the camera. Hello. What a sweetheart. All right, Kim-ADELE, have a wonderful weekend, and I'll be in touch. Bye for now.
Bye.
And I just like to leave as my last words for today. We have so many incredible people here on our team at USA Global TV and Radio. You can actually find out more about them on our website, which is usaglobaltv.com. Please do reach out to them. They come here and share their expertise, their education, their knowledge so that they can help you. And so many times I will ask somebody when they say they're going through something, did you reach out to Janetta? Did you reach out to Kim-ADELE? Did you reach out to Madeline? Did you reach out to Roland? People are here and they want to hear from you. So if you are a fan of our programming, we have about 25 shows a week. We have some new shows that are starting this month. Go over to our website, look and see who's on our team, and then reach out to them, because it will change your life in some way or another, because you're making a new connection and you don't know where that connection is going to go. Thank you again for listening. Our next show typically would be The Power of Etiquette and Manners. We are taking a break just for today. Philip Sykes is on holiday. So we will be back with Talking Heads and Dr. Madeline Chan and her episode. So please do join us for that. Thanks again. God bless you. Have a beautiful weekend. And thank you again for supporting our work and for being a fan.